I was in the middle of rearranging my living room when I stumbled upon it. The little card, folded neatly and tucked away between the couch cushions, was a bright spot in the otherwise dull, beige decor of my home. I picked it up, brushing off a few crumbs that had gathered on its surface. The card was a pale lavender, with delicate script that read, "Welcome to the neighborhood. Join me for tea this Saturday at 3. It was signed simply, Clara. A smile tugged at my lips as I traced the letters with my finger. It had been a long time since anyone had reached out to me like this, with such warmth and genuine intention. I could almost hear Clara's voice in my head, inviting me with a soft yet cheerful tone. But as quick as the smile appeared, it faded, replaced by a wave of uncertainty. "Tea," I murmured to myself, a hint of sarcasm lacing the word. The thought of sitting in a stranger's house, sipping herbal blends while making small talk felt daunting. I had convinced myself that I was fine being alone, that I preferred it that way. After all, solitude was familiar territory, a safe cocoon I had wrapped myself in over the years. But the truth was, every time I returned home to silence, the weight of loneliness pressed down on my chest. I could hear the echoes of laughter from neighbors mingling outside, the distant sound of children playing, and the occasional bark of a dog. I longed for connection, for friendship, but the mere thought of stepping out of my comfort zone made my stomach twist. I tossed the card back onto the coffee table, but it wouldn't leave my mind. As the days passed, it lingered like a stubborn itch. I could see Clara, a vision of her standing on her doorstep, her hair glimmering in the sunlight, her eyes sparkling with friendliness. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad. Maybe it was time to break free from my self-imposed isolation. Saturday arrived with a crispness in the air that hinted at the changing seasons. I stood before my mirror, adjusting my hair for the third time. What was I even doing? I swallowed hard, my reflection looking back at me with a mix of apprehension and hope. "Just go, Jenna," I whispered to myself, trying to muster some courage. When I finally stepped outside, the sun bathed the neighborhood in warmth, and I felt a flutter of nervous excitement in my stomach. I walked slowly, my footsteps crunching against the gravel path leading to Clara's house. As I approached, I could see her through the window, moving gracefully about her kitchen, setting the table with care. I knocked softly, my heart racing as I waited. The door swung open, revealing Clara, a vision of welcoming charm. She wore a floral dress that flowed softly around her knees, and her hair fell in gentle waves over her shoulders. "Jenna, so glad you could make it," she exclaimed, her voice bright and inviting. "Thanks for the invitation," I replied, trying to match her enthusiasm but feeling a bit shy underneath her gaze. "Please come in," she urged, stepping aside to let me enter. The inside of her home was a perfect reflection of her personality. It was cozy, filled with warm colors and eclectic decor that seemed to tell a story. The aroma of freshly brewed tea wafted through the air, mingling with the scent of baked goods. "Wow, it smells amazing in here," I said, taking in the sight of a beautiful spread laid out on the dining table. "Thank you. I made scones and some lemon curd. I hope you like them," Clara said, her eyes lighting up with pride. "I'm sure I will," I replied, my mouth already watering at the thought of indulging in her homemade treats. As we settled at the table, the conversation flowed easily. We chatted about the neighborhood, our favorite places to eat, and the little quirks of our neighbors. Clara was engaging, her laughter infectious, and I found myself relaxing, forgetting my initial apprehension. But then, as if she sensed a shift in the atmosphere, Clara leaned in closer. "So Jenna, I'd love to know more about you. What brought you to this neighborhood?" I hesitated, my smile faltering. "Oh, just looking for a change, I guess," I replied, keeping my voice light. "Change can be good," she encouraged, her tone sincere. "But I sense there's more to the story. What were you running from?" I felt my chest tighten. The question hung in the air, heavy and uncomfortable. It was a question I had avoided for years, something I had buried deep within me. "I'm not really running from anything," I managed to say, though my voice lacked conviction. Clara's expression softened, but I could see the curiosity in her eyes. You don't have to share if you're not ready. It's just that I find stories fascinating. Everyone has a past, you know? Yeah, I suppose, I replied, forcing a laugh to lighten the mood. Some of us just keep ours a little quieter than others. She nodded, her gaze steady. That's true, but sometimes it's those hidden stories that shape us the most. The conversation shifted, but I could feel the weight of her words lingering. I took a sip of my tea, trying to distract myself from the uncomfortable turn. But as I bit into a scone, my mind was racing. How could she sense that there was more to my story? And why did I feel compelled to share with her, despite my reservations? As the afternoon wore on, we continued to talk, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being exposed. Clara was charming and disarming, yet there was something enigmatic about her that kept me on edge. Each time I thought I had relaxed, she would ask another probing question that sent my defenses right back up. Just as I was about to excuse myself, Clara's phone buzzed on the table, breaking the moment. She glanced at it and sighed. Sorry, I need to take this, she said, standing up. I watched her walk away, wondering if I could escape without being too rude. But my thoughts were interrupted as I noticed a framed photo on the wall. It was a picture of a group of friends, all smiling brightly, and my heart skipped a beat when I recognized one of the faces. It was Sarah. I felt a chill run down my spine as I stared at the photograph. Sarah and I had shared so many memories, but the memories of that night were too painful. I quickly averted my gaze, focusing on the intricate patterns of the tablecloth instead. Sorry about that, Clara said, returning to the table with an apologetic smile. Sometimes work just doesn't let me breathe. Not a problem, I said, trying to sound casual. Were you admiring that photo? She asked, glancing at the wall. Yeah. I didn't realize how many friends you had around here, I replied, my voice trembling slightly. Those were good times, Clara said, her expression growing distant as she looked at the photo. Some friends come and go, but the memories stay with us. I nodded, feeling an uncomfortable tension settle between us. I knew Sarah, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Clara's eyes locked onto mine, and a flicker of recognition crossed her face. You did, yes? I said, my heart racing as the words spilled out. We were best friends. A long time ago, there was a pause, a moment where I felt the air grow thick. Clara leaned forward, her curiosity piqued. What was she like? The question hung in the air, and I hesitated. She was a vibrant, full of life. Clara's expression softened. I can imagine. It must be hard to think about her. I swallowed hard and nodded. Yeah, it is. As I looked into Clara's eyes, I felt a flicker of something. A connection, perhaps, but it was fleeting, and I quickly closed myself off again, unsure of how much I wanted to reveal. We finished our tea, the conversation flowing more comfortably again, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Clara was probing deeper, searching for something I wasn't ready to share. I stood up to leave, thanking Clara for her hospitality, but as I stepped towards the door, I felt a strange mix of relief and curiosity. I had come looking for a friendly connection, yet I could sense that beneath Clara's friendly demeanor lay something more complex, something that would linger in my mind long after I left. As I walked back home, my thoughts swirled. I had wanted to break free from my isolation, but now I found myself tangled in a web of questions about Clara and, more importantly, about my own past. I glanced back at Clara's house one last time before stepping inside my own, the weight of the day settling heavily on my shoulders. Would I see her again? Would I be able to share my story when the time came? Or would I continue to hide behind the walls I had built? Only time would tell. The day after the tea party, I found myself standing in the middle of my living room, staring at the walls that had witnessed so much of my life. It was a quiet afternoon, and the sunlight streamed through the windows, casting soft shadows on the floor. I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the lingering unease from my conversation with Clara the day before. She had a way of drawing me in, making me feel comfortable, and yet there was a nagging feeling in the back of my mind that something about her was off. As I began tidying up, my fingers brushed against something on the coffee table. A small, delicately designed card. I picked it up and squinted at the script. "Welcome to the neighborhood. Join us for tea," it read. It was Clara's invitation, a friendly gesture that now felt like a whisper from the past, pulling me back to a time I had tried so hard to forget. With a sigh, I sank into the couch, the card still in my hand. Memories of Sarah flooded my mind. Her laughter, her endless curiosity, and the bond we had shared. We had been inseparable, two sides of the same coin, until that fateful night when everything changed. The world had become a darker place without her, and I had buried the pain so deep that sometimes I wondered if it was still there at all. I could still remember the feeling of dread that had settled over me when I discovered she was missing. The frantic search, the tears, and the whispers of suspicion that had followed. My heart raced at the thought, and I squeezed my eyes shut, willing the memories away. But they clung to me like shadows. Why did I even think about going to that tea? I muttered to myself, tossing the card aside. Yet a part of me was drawn to Clara. She had that enigmatic smile, a glimmer of understanding in her eyes that made me want to trust her. Perhaps it was time to step out of my solitary existence and try to make a connection, no matter how tentative. As the day wore on, I found myself pacing the floor. I thought about Clara and how she had asked me about my life. It felt like an innocent question, but the way her gaze lingered on me made me uneasy. I could see it in her eyes. She wanted to know more, to peel back the layers and uncover the truths I had buried. Despite my reservations, I decided to attend Clara's tea. After all, it was just a gathering among neighbors, and perhaps I could find some comfort in the company of others. Arriving at her house later that week, I felt a mix of anticipation and dread twisting in my stomach. The door swung open, and Clara greeted me with that same enigmatic smile. "Jenna, I'm so glad you could make it," she said, her voice warm and inviting. I stepped inside, the sweet aroma of freshly baked cookies wafting through the air. The room was filled with soft laughter and chatter, a stark contrast to the silence that usually enveloped my home. As we settled onto plush chairs, Clara engaged me in conversation, and I found myself relaxing, at least for a moment. Her laughter was infectious, and I felt the tension in my shoulders ease as we spoke. We discussed everything from gardening tips to favorite books, and for a brief time it felt like I was part of something bigger than myself. But then Clara's expression shifted, and she leaned in slightly. "So, Jenna, tell me about your childhood. I'm curious about your life before moving here." The question hung in the air, heavy and unexpected. My heart dropped. The past that I had tried so hard to conceal was suddenly being dragged to the forefront. I hesitated, my thoughts racing. "Oh, just the usual. School. Friends." "Friends? Did you have a best friend?" she probed, her eyes narrowing slightly, as if she were reading between the lines. I felt a chill run down my spine. "Yes," I replied, forcing a smile. "Her name was Sarah." "Sarah?" Clara repeated slowly, the name lingering on her lips like a spell. "What was she like?" I swallowed hard, memories flooding my mind. "She was adventurous, always pushing boundaries, ready to explore the world. We had big dreams." I could feel the weight of my words, the memories pressing down on me like a heavy blanket. Clara nodded, a knowing look in her eyes. "And what happened to her?" I froze, my heart racing. The question felt like a trap, a doorway to a past I wasn't ready to revisit. She disappeared," I managed to say, my voice trembling slightly. "I don't really like to talk about it." There was a moment of silence, a palpable tension between us. Clara's gaze bore into mine, searching for something that I wasn't sure I wanted to reveal. "I understand," she said finally, her tone shifting to something more serious. "But if you ever want to talk, I'm here." I nodded, but the unease remained. How could she know about Sarah? Was it just a coincidence? Or was there something more sinister at play? I tried to shake off the feeling, but as I left Clara's house that afternoon, I felt the shadows of my past creeping back in, wrapping around me tighter than before. In the following days, the memory of Sarah haunted me. I couldn't shake the feeling that Clara was somehow connected to my past. I found myself replaying snippets of our conversation over and over, analyzing every word. Why was Clara so interested in Sarah? What did she want from me? One evening, unable to sleep, I sat on the edge of my bed, clutching a photograph of Sarah that I had kept hidden away. In it, we were both smiling, carefree, our arms slung around each other. I traced the outline of her face with my finger, wishing I could turn back time, wishing I could warn her about the darkness that lurked just outside our bubble of friendship. The sound of my phone buzzing on the nightstand startled me. It was a message from Clara, asking how I was and if I wanted to join her for coffee. My heart raced at the thought. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to protect myself from the inevitable probing questions, but another part was drawn to her, a moth to a flame. Finally, I took a deep breath and replied, agreeing to meet the next day. As I lay back down, I could feel the weight of my past pressing down on me, the secrets I had buried coming back to the surface. I knew I was dancing on the edge of something dangerous, but I couldn't help myself. I needed to know what Clara was really after, and more importantly, I needed to confront the memories that refused to stay hidden. When I met Clara for coffee, I was already on edge. She looked radiant as always, her hair catching the light in a way that made her seem almost ethereal. We talked about trivial things at first, but I could feel her probing deeper, and I braced myself for the inevitable. "So, Jenna," she began, her eyes sparkling with curiosity, "what was Sarah really like? I can tell there's more to the story." I hesitated, my heart pounding. She was complicated. We had our dreams, but things didn't go as planned. Clara leaned in, her voice low. "What happened that night? The night she disappeared?" I felt a lump in my throat, the memories swirling like a storm. "We had a fight," I confessed, my voice barely above a whisper. I told her I couldn't go with her. She wanted to leave town, to escape everything. I thought it was just a phase. And then she vanished. Clara finished for me, her tone almost sympathetic. I nodded, tears welling in my eyes. I've carried that guilt ever since. Clara reached across the table, her hand brushing against mine. "You're not alone in this, Jenna. Sometimes sharing the burden can lighten the load." I looked at her, trying to gauge her sincerity. But the more I spoke, the more I felt like I was opening wounds that had never truly healed. I wasn't sure if I could trust her, or if she was merely playing a part in a game I didn't understand. As we finished our coffee, Clara's expression shifted, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. The air was thick with unspoken words, and I left the cafe feeling more unsettled than ever. I knew there was a connection between Clara and Sarah that I had yet to uncover, and the thought filled me with dread. But I also felt a flicker of curiosity, a desperate need to know the truth, even if it meant confronting the darkness of my past. And so I found myself standing at a crossroads, torn between the safety of my solitude and the dangerous allure of uncovering what had been hidden for far too long. As I dusted the shelves in my living room, a small, colorful card slipped from between the pages of a book I had long forgotten. I picked it up and read the elegant script. "Welcome to the neighborhood. Join me for tea this Saturday at 3 p.m. Clara." A part of me wanted to toss it aside, to bury it under the clutter that seemed to accumulate in my life. But another part, a quieter, more hopeful part, urged me to consider it. It had been a while since I had made an effort to connect with anyone. I had been so wrapped up in my own world, haunted by memories of my past, particularly the disappearance of my best friend, Sarah. The thought of attending a gathering, however casual, brought a mix of reluctance and intrigue. I found myself recalling the hollow ache of loneliness that had settled into my bones. Maybe this was an opportunity, a chance to meet someone new, to break the cycle of isolation I had fallen into. As Saturday approached, I felt an unusual flutter of anticipation. I dressed carefully, choosing a soft blue sweater and my favorite pair of jeans. Something about Clara's invitation felt like a lifeline, even as I wrestled with the shadows of my past. When I arrived at her house, I was greeted by a warm smile that seemed to light up her entire face. Clara was everything I had hoped for in a neighbor, friendly, inviting, and effortlessly charming. "Jenna, right? I'm so glad you could make it," she exclaimed, ushering me inside. The room was filled with the aroma of freshly brewed tea and baked goods, and I couldn't help but feel a little more at ease. The conversations flowed naturally, punctuated by laughter and the clinking of teacups. Clara was captivating, her stories lively and engaging. But then, as the afternoon wore on, she casually mentioned Sarah. My heart dropped, and suddenly the room felt smaller, the air heavier. "Do you remember when we were kids, and we used to play in the park all day?" Clara asked, her eyes sparkling with nostalgia. I forced a smile, but inside, I was a whirlwind of emotions. How could she know about Sarah? Yes, those were good times," I managed to reply, my voice barely above a whisper. The mention of Sarah sent a jolt of unease through me, and I quickly changed the subject. But the question lingered in my mind. How did Clara know my past? Days passed, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Clara was somehow entwined with my memories. I confided in Mike, a close friend who had been with me through the darkest days following Sarah's disappearance. He was skeptical at first, brushing off my concerns. "You're just getting to know her, Jenna. It's natural to feel a little uncomfortable at first." But then, as we chatted one evening, he dropped a bombshell. "Jenna, I think you should be careful. I heard Clara is a private detective. She's been involved in some pretty intense cases. You wouldn't want to get mixed up in anything dangerous." My heart raced. Clara, a detective? It all made sense and yet felt so surreal. The pieces began to click into place, and I felt a chill run down my spine. I had opened up about Sarah to Clara, and now I wondered if she was digging for information. When Clara visited again, I was tense, unsure of how to act around her. "You seem a bit on edge, Jenna. Everything okay?" she inquired, her expression unreadable. "Just a lot on my mind," I replied, forcing a smile as I tried to maintain my composure. She leaned in slightly, her eyes narrowing. "I've been thinking about Sarah. You know, the night she disappeared has always puzzled me. Don't you ever want to talk about it?" I felt the blood drain from my face. It was as if the walls were closing in on me. I don't really want to revisit that," I stammered, desperate to deflect her probing. "Sometimes, confronting the past can help us heal," Clara insisted, her voice steady but laced with a hint of urgency. "I can help you find closure, Jenna. Wouldn't that be worth it?" Her words hung heavily in the air. I could feel the tension rising, a palpable force between us. Clara was pushing me, trying to force me to confront the demons I had buried for so long. "How do you even know so much about Sarah?" I finally blurted out, my frustration boiling over. "Let's just say I have my ways," she replied cryptically, a knowing smile playing on her lips. The conversation spiraled into a tense exchange, each word dripping with unspoken implications. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a precipice, teetering between fear and the desperate need for answers. "Jenna, please," Clara said, her tone shifting slightly. "I want to help you. We can uncover the truth together." But I wasn't ready. The thought of digging up old wounds, of revisiting that night, filled me with dread. I managed to change the subject, but her gaze remained fixed on me, as if she could see right through the facade I wore like armor. As Clara left, I closed the door behind her and leaned against it, my pulse racing. I felt trapped in a web of curiosity and fear, unsure of who I could trust. The shadows of my past loomed large, and I was terrified of what might be lurking in the darkness. Days turned into weeks, and Clara continued to drop by, each visit more intense than the last. She would ask probing questions, trying to coax information from me, and each time I felt more cornered. I wanted to trust her, but every time she brought up Sarah, I felt a surge of panic rise within me. "Jenna, you're stronger than you think. You have to confront this," she urged during one of our conversations, her eyes searching mine for any sign of weakness. "I don't know if I can," I admitted, my voice trembling. "It's too painful." Clara leaned closer, her expression softening for just a moment. "I promise, I'm here for you. Just think about it," she said gently before leaving. As I watched her walk away, I was left with a sense of foreboding. The more I learned about Clara, the deeper I fell into uncertainty. Who was she really? What did she want from me? The lines between friend and foe began to blur, and I was left with more questions than answers. I spent my nights tossing and turning, the memories of that fateful night replaying in my mind like a haunting melody I couldn't escape. I had buried those memories deep, but Clara was digging them up, and I didn't know if I was ready to face them. "Jenna, you need to talk to someone," Mike had suggested during one of our late-night conversations. "This is too much for you to handle alone." But I couldn't bring myself to share my fears with him. I didn't want to scare him away or appear weak. The truth was, I was spiraling into a dark place, torn between the urge to uncover the truth and the terror of what I might find. And so, I found myself caught in Clara's web, a reluctant participant in a game I didn't fully understand. Each day brought new revelations, new layers of complexity to our relationship, and the further we went, the more I felt my grip on reality begin to slip away. As I stood in front of the mirror one evening, staring at my reflection, I felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over me. I was no longer just Jenna, the girl who lost her best friend. I was becoming a pawn in a dangerous game, and I didn't know how to escape. I was organizing my living room when I stumbled upon a small, colorful card tucked between the pages of a book I hadn't touched in years. The card was a welcome note from Clara, my new neighbor. The neat handwriting and cheerful design felt almost out of place in my otherwise cluttered home. I had seen Clara a couple of times, her dark hair pulled back into a tight bun and a bright smile on her face. She seemed to radiate warmth, a stark contrast to the chill that had settled in my own heart since Sarah's disappearance. I hesitated, my fingers lingering over the card, recalling the promise I'd made to myself to stay distant from any new friendships. I had been burned before, and the ache of loneliness felt safer than risking a new connection. But as I glanced around at my empty living space, the silence echoed louder than my fears. The thought of attending a simple tea party began to tug at my curiosity. Perhaps the camaraderie of new acquaintances could mend the fractured pieces of my life. So, I found myself standing in front of Clara's house the following afternoon, my heart pounding with each step. The door opened, and there she was, her eyes sparkling with genuine delight. "Jenna, I'm so glad you made it," she exclaimed, ushering me inside. The scent of freshly baked scones wafted through the air, mingling with the aroma of herbal tea. "Thanks for inviting me," I managed, feeling slightly out of place amongst the cheerful decor and the soft chatter of other guests. Clara's smile was infectious, and I allowed myself to relax just a little. As the afternoon unfolded, we exchanged pleasantries, shared laughter, and I found myself opening up about my mundane life. I spoke about my job, my hobbies, and my love for books, all the while sensing Clara's thoughtful gaze lingering a bit too long whenever I mentioned the past. It wasn't until the conversation drifted toward childhood memories that I felt a lump form in my throat. "What about you, Jenna?" Clara asked, her voice smooth yet probing. "Any childhood friends you still keep in touch with?" The question struck a nerve. My pulse quickened as my mind flashed back to Sarah. I hesitated, the smile fading from my lips. "Not really. I lost touch with most of them," I stammered, the weight of that loss pressing heavily on my chest. I could see Clara's interest peaked, her eyes narrowing slightly as if she sensed the deeper story hidden beneath my words. Later that evening, after the guests had departed and the laughter had faded into silence, I couldn't shake the feeling that Clara had been probing for something more. The way she had looked at me, the subtle changes in her tone, it made me uneasy. I brushed it off as paranoia, the kind that often crept in when memories of Sarah resurfaced. But I couldn't help but replay the afternoon in my head, especially Clara's question about my childhood friends. Days passed, and I found myself increasingly drawn to Clara, despite my reservations. I noticed her often in the neighborhood, her presence both comforting and unnerving. It was during a casual conversation with Mike, an old friend, that I learned more about Clara's background. "Have you heard about that new neighbor, Clara?" Mike asked, his brow furrowing with concern. "I don't know," Something just seems off about her. What do you mean? I replied, a sense of dread creeping in. Let me put it this way, he continued, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret. She's a private investigator. Her last case involved some pretty shady characters. People I know. My heart raced. A private investigator? Why would she be interested in me? Mike shrugged, his expression serious. I don't know, but just be careful. Some folks are drawn to the past for reasons you wouldn't want to know. The warning hung in the air long after Mike left. I felt an unsettling mix of intrigue and fear. Clara's interest in my past, particularly about Sarah, suddenly seemed more sinister. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was digging for something that might not be a coincidence. As the days turned into weeks, I tried to keep my distance from Clara, but the pull was undeniable. She exuded an aura of mystery that was hard to resist, and I found myself inviting her over for coffee, hoping to unearth the truth behind her motivations. One afternoon, while sipping tea in my living room, Clara leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with intensity. You know, Jenna, I could really use someone like you in my investigations. Someone who knows the area well, who might be able to find out things I can't. I raised an eyebrow, caught off guard. What do you mean? Think of it as a partnership, she suggested, her tone casual yet layered with implication. You'd be my eyes and ears. I need someone who understands the dynamics of this place. I could uncover a lot more if I had someone on the inside. A rush of adrenaline surged through me. Part of me was curious, excited even, while another part screamed at me to run. I don't know, Clara. I'm not sure I can help with anything like that. Oh, come on, she urged, her voice almost coaxing. You'd be doing a favor for someone who cares about the truth, and you might even find some closure for yourself in the process. Closure. The word hung in the air, and I felt its weight. The possibility of finally uncovering the secrets surrounding Sarah's disappearance was tantalizing, but I also sensed a dangerous edge to Clara's proposition. I'll think about it, I said, trying to sound nonchalant, but inside I was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. As the days passed, I became increasingly aware of the shadows lurking around me. The more I learned about Clara, the more I felt tangled in a web of danger. She had a way of drawing me in, and I was both captivated and terrified. I needed to know more about her motivations, to understand the connection between her past and mine. I decided to confront Mike again, hoping he could shed more light on Clara's history. You were right about Clara. She's been asking about Sarah. I admitted, my voice shaking slightly. He frowned, his expression serious. You need to be careful, Jenna. I've seen what happens when people dig too deep. Clara's last case got messy, and I wouldn't want you caught in the middle of something you can't handle. Do you think she's dangerous? I asked, the fear creeping back in. I don't know, he replied, his eyes piercing mine. But I can tell you this. Some things are better left buried. You might want to reconsider your relationship with her. Mike's words resonated within me, igniting a fire of doubt. I found myself standing at a crossroads, torn between the loyalty I felt toward my friend and the nagging curiosity about Clara's true intentions. It was becoming increasingly clear that getting involved with Clara could lead me down a dark path, one littered with secrets I wasn't sure I was ready to confront. I spent sleepless nights wrestling with my choices, the shadows of my past looming larger with each passing day. I knew I needed to make a decision soon, before I lost myself entirely in the dangerous intrigue that surrounded Clara. As much as I wanted to uncover the truth about Sarah, I couldn't shake the feeling that sometimes the truth was a double-edged sword. With every encounter, I felt the stakes rising, and I knew I had to tread carefully. It was a game of chess, and I was unsure of the moves I should make. The only thing I was certain of was that I had to dig deeper into Clara's life before I allowed myself to be ensnared by her enigmatic charm. As I sat on my couch, the sunlight streaming through the window, I absent-mindedly shuffled through the clutter that had accumulated in my living room. It was a typical Saturday morning, the kind where I usually lost myself in chores to avoid thinking about the emptiness that had settled around me since Sarah disappeared. The mundane tasks felt like a balm to my restless mind, But then my fingers grazed something unusual, a card tucked away beneath a pile of magazines. Curiosity piqued. I pulled it out and examined it. It was a simple card, decorated with cheerful illustrations of flowers and birds. "Welcome to the neighborhood," it read, signed by Clara, my new neighbor. I hadn't had the chance to meet her yet, but I remembered seeing her moving in a few days earlier. There was something about that card that stirred a sense of intrigue within me, a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, I could forge a new connection in this quiet suburb that felt so isolating. As I contemplated the invitation to her tea gathering, a familiar wave of reluctance washed over me. It had been years since I'd let anyone get close. The memories of Sarah, the laughter we shared, and the dark shadow of her disappearance loomed large in my mind. I had shut myself off from the world, building walls to protect myself from the pain that hovered just beneath the surface. Yet, as I glanced around my empty living room, a deeper longing for companionship gnawed at me. "Maybe just this once," I whispered to myself, my voice barely breaking the silence. I picked up the card again, tracing the delicate script with my finger. A part of me craved the warmth of friendship, even if it was just a cup of tea and some small talk. The afternoon of the tea gathering arrived, and I found myself standing at Clara's door, heart racing. When she opened the door, I was met with a bright smile that seemed to light up the entire entryway. Clara had an aura of openness and warmth that instantly put me at ease. "Jenna, right? I'm so glad you could make it. Thanks for inviting me," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper as I stepped into her inviting home. The aroma of freshly baked pastries filled the air, and for a moment, I allowed myself to forget the weight of my past. Clara ushered me into the cozy living room, where a small group of women were gathered, chatting animatedly. I felt a twinge of apprehension but tried to shake it off. "Would you like some tea?" Clara asked as she gestured toward a beautifully set table. "Sure, that would be great," I replied, grateful for the distraction. As I sat down, I was surprised by how quickly the conversation flowed. Clara had a way of making everyone feel included, and I found myself laughing and sharing stories about my life. But then, in the midst of laughter, Clara turned to me with a curious glint in her eye. "So, Jenna, what brought you here? I mean, what's your story?" My heart raced. That question felt like a tidal wave crashing into the carefully constructed dam I had built around my memories. "Oh, just the usual suburban life," I stammered, my voice faltering as I felt the tension coiling in my chest. "Really? I sense there's more to it than that," Clara pressed gently. Her smile was warm, but there was something in her gaze that made me uneasy. As I attempted to steer the conversation away from my past, I couldn't shake the feeling that Clara was probing, searching for something deeper. A part of me wanted to confide in her, to share the truth about Sarah, but another part screamed to keep everything buried. The gathering carried on, but I felt the atmosphere shift. Clara's casual inquiries seemed harmless enough, yet they lingered in my mind long after I left her house that day. Over the next few days, I couldn't help but replay our conversation. The way Clara had looked at me, the way her questions felt like a gentle tugging at the edges of my carefully guarded heart. I tried to push it aside, but curiosity mingled with dread, causing a whirlwind of emotions to swirl within me. Then, one evening, I received a call from an old friend, Mike. As we chatted, he casually mentioned Clara. "You know she's a private detective, right?" he said, his tone shifting from casual to serious. "What? No, I didn't know that," I replied, feeling a knot form in my stomach. "Yeah, she's been involved in some pretty heavy cases. I'd be careful around her if I were you." His warning hung in the air like a dark cloud. "What do you mean?" I asked, my heart racing. "Let's just say her last case involved people I know. It was a mess, Jenna. Just keep your guard up." I hung up, my mind racing. The connection between Clara's questions and her profession began to take shape in my mind. Had she been probing for a reason? Did she know more about Sarah than she let on? A few days later, Clara dropped by unexpectedly. I was still reeling from Mike's warning when she walked into my living room, her demeanor friendly but with an intensity that made me uneasy. "Hey, Jenna, I was hoping we could talk more about Sarah, she said, settling onto the couch across from me. My heart sank. Sure. What do you want to know? Clara leaned in, her eyes narrowing slightly as if she were assessing my reaction. I've been doing some research, and I think there might be more to her disappearance than what was reported. You were close to her, right? You must have some insights. A thick silence enveloped the room. I could feel the walls closing in around me, my breath quickening as I fought against the memories threatening to resurface. I don't know if I can help you, I said, my voice trembling slightly. Jenna, I'm not trying to pry. I genuinely believe that you could help uncover the truth. It's important, Clara pressed, her voice almost a whisper now. Why do you care so much? I blurted out, the words bursting from me before I could stop them. Clara's expression shifted, a flicker of something unreadable crossing her face. Because I care about justice, and I sense that you do too. Sometimes, people hold the key to solving a mystery, even if they don't realize it. I felt trapped. The air was thick with unspoken words, and I was caught between wanting to flee from the conversation and the urge to confront the ghosts of my past. I don't know if I want to dig into that again, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. She leaned back, assessing me. What if I told you that you could help not just yourself, but also bring closure to others affected by this? You could be my informant. The word struck me like a slap. Informant felt wrong, like I was being asked to betray my own memories of Sarah. Why me? I asked, my voice shaky. Because you knew her best. I believe you have insights that could lead us to answers, Clara replied, her gaze steady and unwavering. I hesitated, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. I need time to think, I finally said, my heart racing as I felt the walls closing in again. Clara nodded, but I could sense her frustration. I understand, but just think about it. You don't have to do this alone. As she left, I felt a storm brewing inside me. The prospect of helping Clara felt both thrilling and terrifying. What if I did uncover something about Sarah's disappearance? What if it led to more pain? Days passed, and the idea of becoming Clara's informant gnawed at me. I found myself torn between the desire for closure and the fear of reliving the darkest chapter of my life. Finally, I made a decision. I would help Clara. I had to know what really happened to Sarah. I had to confront the shadows of my past. And so, with a mix of dread and determination, I picked up the phone to call Clara, ready to step into the unknown. I sat on my bed, the afternoon light spilling through the curtains, casting a warm glow over my room. The diary lay open in front of me, its pages filled with Sarah's handwriting. My best friend, my confidant, the girl who had vanished from my life like a shadow disappearing at dusk. I could hardly breathe as I flipped through the pages, each one a haunting reminder of the secrets we had shared and the ones that had remained hidden. Jenna, are you okay? Clara's voice broke through my thoughts, pulling me back to the present. She was standing in the doorway, her expression a mix of concern and curiosity. I hadn't invited her in. She had just walked into my space as if she owned it. I closed the diary quickly, but the movement felt too abrupt, too defensive. Yeah, I'm fine, I replied, though my voice wavered. I could feel the heat creeping up my neck, the flush of embarrassment. Just looking through some old things. Clara stepped inside, her presence commanding and enigmatic. You were really close to Sarah, weren't you? She asked, her tone casual yet probing. She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, her gaze piercing into me like she was trying to read my thoughts. I nodded, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. We were inseparable, since we were kids. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. I didn't want to talk about Sarah, not now, not with Clara. But something about her made it hard to resist. Must be hard, not knowing what happened to her, Clara said, her voice dropping to a softer, more sympathetic tone. I can't imagine how that must feel. I swallowed hard, my heart racing. It's been years, I managed to say, though the pain felt as fresh as the day it happened. I've tried to move on. Have you? Clara asked, tilting her head slightly, her dark hair falling over her shoulder. Or do you think about her every day? Her question hung in the air like a heavy mist. I hesitated, searching for the right words. It's complicated, I finally replied, my voice barely above a whisper. I think about her, yes, but I try not to dwell on it. Clara stepped closer, her curiosity seeming to deepen. What if I told you that I think there are still answers out there? That maybe you could find closure? My heart raced at her words. Closure? How? You don't know what happened. I felt a surge of anger mixed with desperation. Nobody does. But I've been digging. I have some leads, Clara said, her eyes sparkling with a fervor that both intrigued and scared me. I could help you, Jenna. I shook my head, feeling a flood of emotions. I don't need help. I just want to forget. The truth was I was terrified of what digging into the past might uncover. The secrets, the guilt. It all felt too heavy to bear. Do you really want to forget? Or do you want to remember, but in a way that makes sense? Clara took another step closer, her intensity palpable. What if you could finally understand what happened? I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. I don't want to talk about this, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. You don't understand. Then help me to understand, Clara urged, her voice steady, unwavering. You owe it to Sarah. That name sent a jolt through my body. Sarah, the name I whispered in the dark, the name that haunted my dreams. You don't know anything about it? I spat, my frustration boiling over. You don't know what I went through. Then tell me, Clara replied softly, her gaze unwavering. Tell me what happened that night. I felt the walls closing in around me. The memories rushed back. Sarah's laughter, her bright smile, the last time I saw her before everything changed. We were at the lake. I started, my voice trembling. We were just hanging out, like we always did. Then, she wanted to swim and I didn't. I didn't want to. Clara was silent, allowing me to continue, though a part of me was screaming to stop. I told her I'd wait for her on the shore. I thought she'd be fine. Jenna, it wasn't your fault, Clara interjected gently. You couldn't have known what would happen. But I should have gone with her, I shouted, the tears welling up in my eyes. I should have done something. I should have. Should have done what? Clara pressed, her voice firm yet caring. You can't blame yourself for something you couldn't control. I turned away, wiping my eyes with the back of my hand. You don't get it. I was her best friend. I should have protected her. And you think running away from the truth will change that? Clara countered, her tone sharper than before. You think burying it will make it go away? I felt a surge of anger and pain. What do you want from me, Clara? You barely know me. You can't just come in here and act like you understand. I want to help you find the truth, Clara said, her voice steady. But you have to let me in. You have to trust me. Trust. The word echoed in my mind like a distant memory. I had trusted Sarah, and look where that had led me. But Clara was right about one thing. I did want answers. I wanted to understand what had happened to my friend, to finally put the pieces together. Taking a deep breath, I looked Clara in the eyes. What do you know? I asked, my voice trembling. What have you found? She straightened, a glimmer of excitement in her eyes. I've been talking to people in the neighborhood, anyone who might have seen Sarah that night. There are whispers, Jenna, things that connect to her disappearance. My heart raced as I considered her words. Like what? I pressed, feeling a mix of hope and dread. Clara stepped closer, lowering her voice. There are rumors about a man who was seen near the lake that night, someone who didn't belong. I think if we dig deeper, we might find out more. I felt a chill run down my spine. A man? Why didn't anyone ever mention this before? Because it's easier to forget, Clara replied, her gaze fierce. But we can't let fear hold us back. We owe it to Sarah to find out what really happened. I hesitated, the weight of her words pressing down on me. And what if we find something we don't want to know? Then we face it together, Clara said, her tone unwavering. You won't be alone this time. In that moment, something shifted within me. I could feel the walls I had built around myself starting to crack. Perhaps it was time to confront the past, to unearth the secrets that had lain buried for too long. Perhaps it was time to seek the truth, no matter how painful. I nodded slowly, my resolve hardening. Okay, let's do it. Clara's expression softened, relief washing over her face. Thank you, Jenna. I promise you won't regret this. As I looked at her, I felt a strange mix of fear and anticipation. I was about to embark on a journey that could change everything, but I knew one thing for sure. I was tired of living in the shadows of my past. It was time to step into the light, no matter what awaited me there. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across my living room as I sank into the worn leather couch, clutching a steaming mug of chamomile tea. The warmth of the tea did little to soothe the growing unease that had settled in my chest. Ever since I met Clara, a chill had crept into my life, a sense of foreboding I couldn't shake. I took a sip and stared at the flickering candle on the coffee table, its flame dancing nervously, much like my own thoughts. Maybe I'm just being paranoid, I muttered to myself, but even as I said it, I doubted the words. The visit from Mike earlier that day echoed in my mind. Jenna, you need to be careful, he had said, concern etched on his face. That Clara woman, there's something off about her. I've heard things. Like what? I had pressed, my heart racing at the implication of his words. Her last case, it involved people I know, people who ended up in deep trouble. Just be cautious, okay? I had brushed off his warnings, but deep down, Mike's words clung to me like a shadow. I had been drawn to Clara, her enigmatic smile and probing questions igniting a mix of curiosity and fear within me. Yet, as days turned into nights, the thrill of our connection gave way to an unsettling sense of dread. That night, I decided to go for a walk, hoping the fresh air would clear my mind. The streets were eerily quiet, the only sound being the soft crunch of gravel beneath my feet. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see Clara lurking in the shadows, her piercing gaze following my every move. Get a grip, Jenna, I whispered to myself, but the words felt hollow in the stillness of the night. As I turned a corner, I noticed a figure at the far end of the street, half hidden by the darkness. My heart raced. I squinted, trying to discern if it was just a trick of the light or something more sinister. The figure remained still, an unsettling presence in the night. I quickened my pace, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the stillness. I could feel a knot tightening in my stomach, a primal instinct urging me to flee, but the feeling of being pursued was inescapable. I glanced back again, and the figure was closer now, almost as if it had moved with me. Is someone there? I called out, my voice trembling, but the only response was the rustle of leaves in the wind. I turned to sprint back home, adrenaline coursing through my veins. As I reached my front door, I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking. Once inside, I locked the door behind me and leaned against it, gasping for breath. Just my imagination, I told myself, but the paranoia gnawed at me. I needed to talk to Mike, to share my fears and seek reassurance, but I hesitated. What if he thought I was losing my mind? The next morning, I decided to confront Clara about how I was feeling. I needed to understand her better, to decipher whether she was a friend or a foe. When she knocked on my door later that day, I felt a mix of excitement and dread. Hey, Jenna, Clara greeted cheerfully, her smile bright. I brought some muffins. I thought we could talk about the investigation. Sure, come in, I said, forcing a smile as I led her into the kitchen. The aroma of fresh muffins wafted through the air, but I couldn't enjoy the moment. As we settled at the table, I took a deep breath. Clara, can I ask you something? Of course. What's on your mind? She replied, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. I've been feeling a bit anxious lately. I don't know if it's just me, but I can't shake this feeling that someone is watching me. It's like I'm being followed. I confessed, watching her reaction closely. Clara's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of something in her eyes, Was it concern or curiosity? That sounds really unsettling, Jenna. Have you seen anyone specific? No, it's just this feeling. I was out last night and I thought I saw someone. It's probably nothing, but I trailed off, unsure of how to articulate my fears. Sometimes our minds can play tricks on us, especially when we're stressed, Clara said, her tone soothing. But it's good you're talking about it. Maybe you need to take a break from all this. Maybe, I murmured, but the words felt inadequate. Clara leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. You know, the past has a way of creeping up on us. Sometimes it helps to confront those fears head-on. What do you think? I stared at her, confused. What do you mean? I mean, maybe digging deeper into what happened with Sarah could help you find some closure. You might uncover something that puts your mind at ease, Clara suggested, her gaze intense. Or it could make things worse, I countered, the anxiety creeping back. Or it could set you free, she replied, her voice unwavering. But it's your choice. Just remember, I'm here to help. I nodded slowly, her words sinking in like a stone. The weight of the past loomed over me, but I felt a flicker of resolve. Maybe facing my fears, understanding them, was the only way to reclaim my life. As our conversation continued, I tried to focus on the investigation, on Sarah, but Clara's presence only heightened my sense of discomfort. The more I learned, the more I felt like I was being drawn into a web of secrets, and Clara was the spider at the center. Over the next few days, I became acutely aware of my surroundings. Every shadow seemed to shift. Every rustle of leaves sent my heart racing. I began to notice a figure loitering near my house, always just out of sight, but close enough to make my skin crawl. One evening, I stepped out onto my porch, trying to shake off the anxiety. "Hey!" I shouted into the darkness. "Who's there?" Silence. I squinted into the night, my heart pounding. Suddenly, a figure darted behind a tree, and I felt the blood drain from my face. Panic surged through me, and I rushed back inside, locking the door with trembling hands. "Okay, Jenna, you're imagining things," I whispered, but the doubt clawed at me. The following evening, I finally confided in Mike. "I think someone is following me, and I'm scared. I need your help," I said, my voice trembling. "Jenna, I told you not to get too close to Clara," Mike said, concern etched on his face. "You're letting your imagination run wild." "It's not just my imagination. I've seen someone," I insisted, exasperated. "Look, let's just keep this rational. Why don't you take a break from Clara? Maybe she's not the person you think she is," he suggested, his brow furrowing. I felt a mix of frustration and fear. I can't just cut ties with her. I need to know what happened with Sarah. I need to understand. Just be careful, okay? Sometimes digging too deep can lead to places we don't want to go, Mike warned, and I could see the concern in his eyes. The tension between us hung in the air, but I was determined to uncover the truth. I left Mike's house feeling more conflicted than ever. My dreams were haunted by the figure I had seen, and the lines between reality and paranoia began to blur. That night, sleep eluded me. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with thoughts of Clara and Sarah. What had happened that night? What secrets had been buried? The questions spiraled, twisting tighter around me, suffocating my resolve. And then, right when I thought I could finally drift off, I heard it, a soft tapping against my window. My heart leaped into my throat as I sat up, listening intently. The sound came again, gentle but persistent. "Is this really happening?" I whispered to myself, my voice shaking. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, slowly approaching the window, dread pooling in my stomach. I parted the curtains just enough to peer outside, and my breath caught in my throat. The figure was there, cloaked in darkness, staring directly at me. My pulse quickened, terror gripping me. "What do you want?" I shouted, my voice echoing in the stillness. The figure didn't respond, just stood there, unmoving, as if it were waiting for something. The night felt heavy with a sense of impending doom, and I stumbled back from the window, nearly tripping over my own feet. I needed to call Mike, to tell him what was happening, but the phone felt like an anchor weighing me down. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Instead, I stood frozen, my mind racing through every worst-case scenario. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the figure turned and disappeared into the darkness, leaving me alone in my room, heart racing and thoughts spiraling. The next day, I met Clara at a cafe, a sense of urgency driving me to confront her. "Clara, I think someone is following me," I blurted out as soon as I sat down, my voice trembling. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across my backyard, a chill settled in the air. I stood at the kitchen sink, rinsing off the last of the dishes from dinner, but my mind was elsewhere, haunted by the unsettling conversation I had with Clara just days before. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something, and every time I thought about Sarah, the knot in my stomach tightened. It had been a week since I'd met Clara, the enigmatic new neighbor who had quickly woven herself into the fabric of my life. What had started as a simple invitation to tea had spiraled into something far more complex than I had ever anticipated. Clara's interest in my past, particularly concerning Sarah, was unnerving. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and glanced out the window, the fading light casting eerie shapes among the trees. Just as I turned away, a flicker of movement caught my eye. I squinted, trying to discern what it was, but the darkness was creeping in fast. I dismissed it, blaming my overactive imagination. Yet, the feeling that I was being watched gnawed at me, and I quickly closed the curtains. Later that night, as I lay in bed, sleep evaded me. My mind was a whirlwind of memories, fragments of laughter, secrets shared, and the warmth of friendship that had been stolen from me. I could still hear Sarah's voice, bright and full of life, echoing in my mind. The night she disappeared was a foggy haze, a traumatic event that lingered in the depths of my soul like a ghost refusing to move on. I had thought I moved past it, but Clara's probing questions had stirred something inside me, something I wasn't sure I was ready to confront. Suddenly, the sound of rustling outside jolted me awake. My heart raced as I sat up, straining to listen. It was quiet for a moment, and then I heard it again, a soft crunching of leaves. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, my feet cold against the floor. Grabbing my phone from the nightstand, I crept toward the window, careful not to make a sound. Peering through the drapes, I strained to see the backyard. The moonlight illuminated the space, but I saw nothing out of the ordinary. Just as I was about to turn away, a figure emerged from the shadows, slipping through the gate that led into my yard. My breath caught in my throat. It was Clara. What was she doing here? A wave of anxiety washed over me. I could feel the adrenaline pumping through my veins as I watched her move with purpose, looking around as if searching for something. I had to know what was going on. I grabbed my jacket and slipped out the front door, careful to silence the creaking hinges. As I approached the backyard, I could see Clara crouched near the old oak tree, her hands sifting through the dirt. My heart raced with confusion and fear. "Clara!" I called out, my voice breaking the stillness of the night. She jumped, turning to face me, her expression a mix of surprise and something else, something unsettling. "Jenna, you scared me?" she said, standing up and brushing her hands on her jeans. "What are you doing out here? What are you doing?" I shot back, crossing my arms defensively. "Why are you digging in my yard?" She hesitated, her gaze flickering to the ground and back to me. I thought I found something. A clue, perhaps," she said, the weight of her words hanging in the air. "A clue about what?" I pressed, my heart hammering in my chest. "About Sarah?" Clara's eyes widened slightly as if she had been caught off guard. "Yes, I believe we're getting closer to the truth about what happened to her," she said, her voice low and filled with intensity. A chill ran down my spine. "You need to stop this," I said, feeling a surge of panic. "You're digging up my past. You're digging up Sarah's past. You don't know what you're getting into. Don't you want to know?" Clara's tone shifted, almost pleading. "Don't you want to find out what really happened? to put an end to the uncertainty. I faltered, my mind racing. Of course I want to know, but not like this. Not with you snooping around in the dark. Clara took a step closer, her expression softening. I understand your hesitation, Jenna, but I'm doing this for you. For Sarah. We both deserve answers. There was a desperation in her voice, a hint of something that made me wary. Answers or revenge? I asked, my voice trembling. I don't know if I can trust you. We can't afford to keep living in the shadows of our past, Clara replied, her eyes locking onto mine with a fierce intensity. You may not realize it, but this is our chance to find closure. I felt a mixture of anger and fear ripple through me. Closure? You think digging up old wounds will give us closure? You barely know me, Clara. You don't know what I've been through. I may not know everything, but I know what it's like to lose someone, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. I lost my sister, Jenna. I lost her the same way you lost Sarah. And I'm not going to rest until I find the truth. The revelation hit me like a blow to the gut. My mind spun as I processed her words. Your sister, I echoed, the weight of her confession pressing down on me. You think you're doing this for some kind of justice? For Sarah? Clara nodded, her expression fierce but vulnerable. This isn't just about you. It's about me too. I need to know what happened. I need to bring justice for Sarah. For myself. Justice, I repeated, my voice rising. What if you're wrong? What if you're chasing shadows? I'm chasing the truth, she exclaimed, her frustration boiling over. And if you don't want to help, that's fine, but don't stand in my way. I won't let fear dictate our lives anymore. I took a step back, shaken by her fervor. I don't want to be part of this anymore, I said, my voice firm. I can't. It's too much. For a moment, we stood there in silence, the tension thick between us. I could see the determination in her eyes, but I was also aware of the desperation that underlined her words. I can't do this alone, she finally said, her voice softer. I need you, Jenna. You're the only one who can help me find the truth. The weight of her gaze bore down on me, and I felt the pull of her plea. My heart wavered between fear and the desire for closure. What if we find something we're not ready to face? I asked, my voice trembling. What if it leads us to a place we can't come back from? I'm willing to take that risk, Clara replied, her voice steady. What about you? I looked away, my mind racing. The thought of digging deeper into Sarah's disappearance filled me with dread, but I also felt the flicker of hope. Maybe this was the closure I had been seeking all along, in whatever form it might take. Finally, I nodded, albeit reluctantly. Okay, I'll help you, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But we do it my way. No more sneaking around in the dark. I want to be involved, but we need to take this slowly. Clara's face broke into a tentative smile, relief washing over her features. Thank you, Jenna. I promise you won't regret this. As we stood together in the fading light, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were stepping into a web of secrets and lies. One that would lead us down a path neither of us could predict. But for the first time in a long while, I felt the flicker of hope that perhaps, together, we could finally confront the shadows of the past. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the trees, I found myself standing in front of the old cabin. The air felt heavy, thick with the weight of memories I had buried deep within me. I could hardly believe that I was here, at the place where Sarah was last seen, where everything had changed. My heart raced. Each beat echoed the fear and dread that had been building inside me since I first learned about Clara's intentions. I took a deep breath, the earthy scent of damp wood and underbrush filling my lungs. With the diary clutched tightly in my hands, I felt an unsettling mixture of anxiety and determination. Each entry in Sarah's diary had peeled back layers of my memories, revealing a girl who was troubled, lost, and desperately seeking a way out. I could almost hear her voice whispering in my ear, urging me to uncover the truth. Just take a look, Jenna, I whispered to myself, trying to steady my nerves. You owe it to her. As I stepped closer to the cabin, I noticed how the wood was weathered and gray, the windows boarded up as if to keep the past locked away. I hesitated at the threshold, my heart pounding in my chest. What if this was a mistake? What if I opened a door I could never shut again? But I couldn't turn back now. I had to confront the truth, no matter how painful it might be. "Sarah, I'm here," I murmured, pushing the door open with a creak that reverberated through the stillness. The inside was dark, the air stale and musty. Dust motes danced in the faint light that filtered through the cracks in the wood. I fumbled for my phone, using its flashlight to pierce the shadows. "Where are you?" I called out, though I knew I was alone. The silence was deafening, a stark reminder of the void Sarah had left behind. I took a few cautious steps inside, the floorboards groaning under my weight. My gaze swept across the room, landing on an old fireplace that looked as if it hadn't been used in years. I felt a surge of emotions, grief, anger, and a yearning for answers. "What happened to you, Sarah?" I whispered as I moved deeper into the cabin. That was when I heard it, a rustle behind me. I spun around, heart racing, my pulse hammering in my ears. There, standing in the doorway, was Clara. "Jenna," she said, her voice low and measured. "I knew you'd come." "Clara, what are you doing here?" I demanded, my voice sharp with irritation. "You shouldn't have followed me." "Followed you?" Clara raised an eyebrow, her expression unreadable. "I didn't follow you. I've been here waiting. I told you I had a lead." "A lead?" The word tasted bitter in my mouth. "You think this is a game? This isn't just about finding a lead. This is about Sarah's life. This is about my past." "Yes," she replied, stepping further into the cabin. "And that's exactly why I'm here. We both want the same thing, don't we? Do we?" I shot back, my frustration boiling over. "I don't even know if I can trust you. You've been so vague about everything. And now you show up here like you're some kind of guardian angel." "I'm not your angel, Jenna." Clara's tone was firm, but there was an underlying sadness in her eyes that caught me off guard. "I'm just someone who wants to help you uncover what happened. But you need to trust me." "Trust you?" I laughed, a hollow sound that echoed in the empty space. "You're the one who brought all of this back to the surface. You're the reason I'm here, digging up old graves." "Maybe," Clara said, her voice softening, "but this is about more than just Sarah. It's about you too. You're carrying a burden, and it's time to let it go." I felt a surge of anger. "Let it go? You think it's that easy? You think I can just forget about Sarah and the fact that I didn't save her?" Clara stepped closer, her eyes intense. "No, I don't think it's easy, but you have to confront it. This cabin, it holds answers. You just have to look." "Look for what?" I challenged, my voice rising. "What could possibly be left here that I haven't already faced?" "Sometimes it's not about what's left," Clara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's about what you haven't allowed yourself to feel. The truth is rarely simple, Jenna." I hesitated, her words cutting through my anger like a knife. Maybe there was something I hadn't allowed myself to confront, but I didn't want to admit that to Clara. "Not here, not now." "Fine," I said, my voice steadier. "What do you think we'll find?" Clara gestured towards the far corner of the cabin where the light was dimmest. "There's an old trunk over there. It might contain something that belonged to Sarah. Something that could give us more insight into her life and what happened that night." I felt a chill run down my spine at the thought. "You really think there's something in there?" "Only one way to find out," Clara replied, a hint of encouragement in her voice. I swallowed hard, my hands trembling slightly as I made my way over to the trunk. It was old and dusty, the leather cracked and worn. I knelt down, my fingers brushing against the surface, feeling an odd mixture of dread and anticipation. "Open it," Clara urged, her voice steady behind me. With a deep breath, I lifted the latch and opened the trunk. The hinges creaked, and a cloud of dust floated into the air. Inside, I found clothes, photographs, and a few trinkets that had once belonged to Sarah. Each item felt like a piece of her, and as I sifted through them, a wave of nostalgia washed over me. "Look at this," I said, holding up a faded photograph. It was of Sarah and me, arms around each other, grinning widely. We were carefree, blissfully unaware of the darkness that lurked around the corner. "Do you remember that day?" Clara asked, her voice softer now. I nodded, my throat tightening with emotion. "We thought we could conquer the world. We were so naive." "Naivety can be a double-edged sword," Clara said, her tone somber. "It can shield us from pain, but it can also blind us to the truth." I felt a lump form in my throat as I looked at the photograph again. I never wanted to believe anything bad could happen to us. I thought we were invincible. "None of us are," Clara said gently. "Not even Sarah." "Why did she have to go?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Why didn't I see the signs?" "Because sometimes the signs are hidden, Jenna," Clara replied, "and sometimes we choose not to see them. But now you have to confront that choice." As I continued to rummage through the trunk, I unearthed a small, ornate box, its surface glinting in the dim light. I picked it up, curiosity piquing my interest. "What's this?" "Open it," Clara encouraged, leaning closer. With a trembling hand, I unlatched the box and lifted the lid. Inside, I found a collection of letters, tied together with a faded ribbon. My heart raced as I carefully pulled them out, feeling the weight of secrets long held. "What are they?" Clara asked, her eyes fixed on the letters. "I don't know," I replied, feeling a mix of excitement and dread. "But I have to find out." As I untied the ribbon and opened the first letter, I was immediately struck by the familiar handwriting, Sarah's. "Dear Jenna," I read aloud, my voice trembling. "If you're reading this, then something has gone terribly wrong. I don't know how to explain everything, but I need you to know that I love you and I'm sorry." The words blurred as tears filled my eyes, but I pressed on, desperate to uncover the truth. "I've been feeling lost," I read, my voice choked with emotion. "Things have been happening that I can't control, and I'm scared. I don't know who to trust anymore." "Jenna," Clara said softly, placing a hand on my shoulder, "you need to keep reading." I continued, my heart racing as I read Sarah's fears and doubts, the turmoil that had plagued her in those final months. "I think someone is watching me, someone who knows things about me that I don't want them to know. I don't know what to do. I feel trapped." "Jenna," Clara interrupted gently, "you need to understand that Sarah was in a dark place. This isn't just about you. It's about the choices she made." "I know," I snapped, my frustration boiling over. "But I thought I could save her. I thought I could help her." "Did you ever really know how deep her struggles ran?" Clara asked, her voice steady but probing. I fell silent, the truth of her words sinking in. "No, I didn't." "Exactly," Clara said softly. "And that's why you're here now, to finally face it." I took a deep breath, letting the weight of my guilt and regret wash over me. I had to confront this. Not the air was thick with tension as I stood in the dim light of the old cabin. The dust motes danced in the beams of the setting sun, creating an eerie atmosphere that felt almost alive. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, each pulse echoing the dread that had settled in my chest. Clara had followed me here, emerging from the shadows like a specter, her eyes glinting with a mixture of triumph and something else, something darker. "Jenna," she said softly, almost mockingly, "you shouldn't have come here alone." "What do you mean?" "You told me about this place," I replied, my voice shaky. I clutched the worn diary of Sarah, my best friend, tightly to my chest, as if it could protect me from whatever revelation was about to unfold. Clara stepped closer, her presence overwhelming. "I know, but I didn't tell you the whole truth, did I?" Her smile was thin, almost predatory. "You see, this cabin holds more than just memories. It's where everything changed for us." "What are you talking about, Clara?" I asked, my heart racing. "You've been playing games with me, dragging me into this twisted investigation." "Why?" Clara's expression shifted, the mask of the friendly neighbor slipping away to reveal someone far more complex. "Because you need to know, Jenna. You need to face what happened that night. The night Sarah disappeared." I felt a shiver run down my spine. The memories flooded back. Sarah's laughter, our plans of escape from the mundane suburban life, the whispers of freedom that had once seemed so close. But everything had turned into a nightmare, and I had been left alone, carrying the weight of guilt. Sarah and we had a plan, I murmured, the memories swirling in my mind like smoke. We thought we could leave this place behind, but then everything went wrong. Yes, Clara said, her voice low and conspiratorial. But you're missing a crucial part of that story, Jenna. You and Sarah were not just friends. You were sisters in every sense that mattered. Her words hit me like a punch. What are you saying? I felt my stomach drop. We were just friends. We were trying to get out of this town. That's all. Clara stepped back, her eyes narrowing. Is that really all? You had dreams that went beyond friendship, dreams that terrified you both. You were in over your heads, and when the time came, you made a choice that cost Sarah her life. No, I shouted, the denial bursting from my lips. I didn't choose anything. I didn't want her to disappear. I didn't want any of this. My voice quivered, the memories clawing at me. Clara's gaze softened for a moment, a flicker of something almost compassionate. You did, Jenna. You chose to run away instead of facing the truth. You let fear take you away from her, and I've been searching for answers ever since. Searching for answers? I echoed, my mind spinning. You've been manipulating me this entire time. You knew Clara. You knew everything. Her laughter was cold, echoing off the cabin walls. No, Jenna, I wasn't manipulating you. I was trying to save you. I am Sarah's sister, the sister she never got to know. The revelation hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I stumbled back, my mind racing. Sister? But how? Why didn't you tell me? You've been acting like a detective, not like family, because I needed to draw you out. You were hiding, Jenna, hiding from the truth, from your guilt. I couldn't just walk in and say, "Hi, I'm Clara, your best friend's sister. Let's talk about how you let her die." Her voice cracked with emotion, the facade of the detective fading away. Let her die, I gasped, feeling the walls close in around me. I didn't let her die. I loved her. We were supposed to escape together. My voice broke, tears streaming down my face as the reality of my past crashed over me like a tidal wave. Loved her, Clara repeated, her voice trembling. Was that love, Jenna? Leaving her behind when she needed you the most? You were supposed to be her protector, her confidant. But you ran, and she was left alone. Stop it, I cried, my heart racing. You don't know what it was like. I was terrified, Clara. I couldn't face the thought of leaving everything behind, of failing. I thought I could come back for her, but it was too late, Clara finished for me, her voice barely above a whisper. It was too late for Sarah, and now you're haunted by that choice. The truth crashed over me like a wave, leaving me gasping for air. I didn't know. I didn't know what would happen. I choked out, my sobs echoing in the empty cabin. I thought I was doing the right thing. Clara stepped forward, her voice softening. You were a scared girl, Jenna, but now you're an adult. It's time to confront that fear, to forgive yourself for what happened. We can't change the past, but we can find closure. Closure, I repeated, incredulous. How can I find closure when I feel like I've lost everything? I don't even know how to forgive myself. By facing it, Clara said firmly. You need to let go of the guilt that binds you. Sarah wouldn't want you to live this way. She wanted you to be free to find happiness. You need to do this for her, and for yourself. I don't know if I can, I whispered, feeling the weight of my past pressing down on me. What if I can't? Clara reached out, placing a hand on my shoulder. You can. Together, we can uncover the truth and give Sarah the justice she deserves. You're not alone anymore, Jenna. I'm here for you, whether you believe it or not. The intensity of her words settled in my heart, and I felt a flicker of hope. What do we do now? I asked, my voice trembling. We start by acknowledging everything. The good, the bad, and the ugly, Clara replied, pulling me into a comforting embrace. We honor Sarah's memory by facing the truth and uncovering what really happened that night. As I stood there, wrapped in Clara's embrace, a sense of calm washed over me. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with pain and heartache, but perhaps it was time for me to reclaim my life, to confront the shadows of the past and finally set myself free. "Let's do it," I said, determination filling my voice. "Let's find the truth about Sarah, together." With that, we turned back to the shadows of the cabin, ready to unearth the secrets that had haunted me for so long. I realized then that I had a chance to confront my past and, in doing so, perhaps find the freedom I had been seeking all along.